Let's meet our guest this morning then, who is embarking on a big project, a big photography project. Wellington-based photographer Anita Corbin has been creating the First Women project, which is hopefully going to be finished in 2018 to mark the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage. And she's shooting and collecting iconic portraits of 21st century women, 100 in total, and already has a lot of reasons to celebrate because the National Portrait Gallery has bought 7 of them. Anita, is that right?
Yeah, that's
Fantastic.
Right. It's a really good, big achievement.
Good morning to you. Thank you for coming in.
Thank you.
What was the inspiration behind this? Where did the idea come from?
Well, First Women started as I approached my 50th birthday, and I've been a photographer all my life, and I was sort of looking back on things and thinking, well, how am I going to be remembered? Now, I've had a wonderful life photographing all over the world, assignments, everywhere, but I wanted to leave a body of work behind that would be a legacy, really for the next generations to come, that would go down in history to inspire women at this very sort of pivotal point in our lives of 100 years of women's suffrage, women getting the vote, looking back on how we've had an impact on the world within the UK. At the moment, my project's focusing on the UK. And so I started to photograph women who are first in their field. So first to achieve a status within their field.
How did you start to do that research? There's a lot of people to find, isn't there?
Yeah, actually it happened rather fortuitously. I Googled First Women in late 2009, and the first woman that came up was a young woman called Sarah Utin, who was rowing solo across the Indian Ocean at that point. And I thought she would be brilliant as a first, for my first. So I did. I texted her or emailed her in some way, and she was in the middle of the ocean with her comms team, and she said, yeah, she would be delighted to be my first woman. But obviously she hadn't actually finished the row yet, so I didn't want to jinx it too much. I had to wait, yeah. And in fact, she's just finishing her second world record breaking row across the North Pacific within the next couple of days.
Wow.
She'll be the first woman to row solo across the North Pacific this time.
Has everyone been as open as she was then to having this involvement in your project?
I have had a few refusals, but most of the women, I say 85-90% of the women that I approach say, yeah, it's a great project. They get it straight away. It's a very simple concept. It's accessible to women across all ages, all races, in all walks of life, basically. So I've got the youngest is 18 and my oldest was 104.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's a huge range of women.
A big old range, yeah. And you would imagine that because of the fact that they were the first to do these things, they would be quite consistent with the way they feel about the rights of women and the power that women have.
I think they're all very focused individuals. Some are quite stubborn, but they're all very open and giving with their time and with their experience, and that's the wonderful thing. There's sort of a collective nature of this body of women going forward together, and it's like a big embrace almost. And I do feel that with women, it's a very much about us as a group rather than individuals. And so I see this as an inspiration for women all over the world, but specifically young women and girls in England who may be wanting to achieve things in areas that are more male dominated, such as science and engineering and manufacturing. So I'm focusing, on those sectors as well. Just
an excuse for you to meet lots of interesting people.
It is, and I have met some amazing women through the last couple of years.
Who stands out for you then? Well,
I was just thinking about it. The 4 that are on display at the National Portrait Gallery at the moment are Baroness Scotland, Dame Helen Alexander, Dr. Jean Venables, and Jill Matheson. And some of those names may mean things to the listeners, but they represent the worlds of business, politics, engineering, and economics. And, all those sectors there are fairly male-dominated sectors. But Baroness Scotland, I think, I have to say, was one of my most exciting shoots because it was inside the House of Lords. And it was on a day when it was a big debate in the Lords about the public confidence in the media and the police at the Leveson inquiry.
Yeah.
And, in fact, it was a special day that the MPs had been called back in to discuss this. And the Prime Minister was being questioned at the time. time. And during the course of the shoot, she was, Baroness Scotland was actually addressing the Lords in between coming to the photo shoot. So we were on the second floor in a corridor, a very narrow corridor, and she was running up and down the stairs into the chamber in between, coming back to me to be photographed. And she was just great, because a very, intense, sort of stressful time for her. But actually, when she presented to me, she was just another woman.
Yeah.
And it was, it was a very magical shoot. And I really felt that was history in the making.
She still gave you her time and was good about it.
Yeah, and I had, we had lots of chats, and she's very, very determined to raise the awareness of lots of issues to do with women. And she loves her boys, and she's a mum, and she was fueled on tea and Twix, very little else. And yet she was, really making her mark in the world, I'd say.
Well, the reason you're with us today is because because you've made those sales to the National Portrait Gallery, because they've brought them in, and because you're basically halfway through getting your 100 women, aren't you? Just over halfway through.
Yeah, I'm number 51, and my 51st one was a beer taster. The first woman to be an official beer taster.
Really?
For the cask mark.
How
which
interesting.
Is, obviously a body that governs beer quality. So, it just shows you that there's all sorts of subjects that can be put forward. And in fact, I'm looking for more first women. So if any of your listeners have firsts within their fields, I'd be very interested to hear about them.
This must be one of those projects that when you start off and you start to do that research, it's maybe a little bit slow because you don't quite know where to look, and it's hard to get maybe the inspiration for certain things. But the more you do it, and the more people find out about it, it's like a snowball, isn't it? Because you're going to get people telling you, oh, you should be speaking and photographing this person.
Yes, definitely. Yeah. And in fact, that does happen a lot. You get one subject that comes up, and a young woman in it may say, oh, have you heard about so-and-so? She's a brilliant champion break dancer. In fact, I'll be photographing a champion break dancer.
Yeah.
So, I would never have kind of conjured up that idea. So, yes, it's very inclusive. And, and I'm really pleased to hear about all sorts of women from all walks of life, of all ages.
What did your 104-year-old do? Can you remember?
Yeah, she was a local. Well, she was based in Somerset. In Plymouth, in Devon.
Right.
Her name was Edith Kent. She actually passed away a couple of years ago, but she reached the ripe old age of 104, and she was a welder within the Plymouth dockyard. And in 1943, so that was during the war, wasn't it? Yeah, just about the end during the war.
Yeah.
During the war, she was welding within the warheads of the missiles, and because she was so petite and her hands were so small, she could go inside the warhead and do the welding. And
wow.
Her boss, her foreman, said, "You were brilliant. You were better than the men. I'm going to give you equal pay." So she was in 1943 receiving equal pay.
So was she one of the first, then, or the first to get equal pay? Then?
The first, certainly within the Plymouth dockyard, and probably research would say that within the British Isles, she would be one of the first, definitely.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
There's such a range. Are you going to be putting it together in a certain way at the end of it? Have you thought about how you're going to present this?
Well, actually having them at the National Portrait Gallery was my initial dream, which I kind of fantasised about in 2004.
Yeah.
And they have 7 in their collection now, so I'm hoping that will grow as the pictures develop. But I also want to travel it around the country, travel the show to schools and colleges and town halls and places where you wouldn't necessarily see photography, because I'm really conscious that I want to spread that inspiration into areas which may not necessarily be seen, where it may not necessarily be seen, and get as much exposure as possible.
And are you photographing people in the same way each time, or do you change the style that you use for each individual person?
Oh, that's a really good question. I was thinking about this. It's very much, when you take a photograph, you're capturing that moment in time.
Yeah, you've already snapped me.
Yeah, I've taken a nice shot. And it is a kind of culmination of lots of things, especially when you're doing a lot of research. You have all the research, all the knowledge, the location, you might have done a recce, the angle of the camera, the type of lighting that you put in, the message that you're trying to make. And all my photographs, I try and make a statement with the background, in a sense that although the background's not as important as the woman is the key, obviously the essence of the woman, the background sets the scene. So, for instance, in the Baroness Scotland portrait, she's in a corridor within the House of Lords looking out of a window. So I try and make people think about, well, what is going on in the portrait. But it's a timeless moment that you're putting into, this sort of making it timeless. You're making it the very split second of the camera opening. It's not even a second. And you're capturing everything that you put in through the lens has to come out in a moment in time and making it timeless so that it lasts forever and goes on down into history. Those portraits will be there forever now.
Do you take lots during each shoot then and select your favourite?
Yeah, I do try and do a few setups because sometimes it takes a little while to get to know the woman. And also the most important thing is the rapport between the photographer and the subject.
Because not everyone likes having their photo. I mean, I don't.
No,
like having your photograph taken.
You have to have a mutual trust between the photographer and the subject. And that is what I think is, the essence of the woman. I try and capture that by allowing myself to be the conduit for her character and her being at the time. And hopefully, and I have had some really good, responses and thank yous, and obviously the ultimate accolade is to have them up in the National Portrait Gallery, and for those women to go and see them, and be standing there in front of them and recognising themselves.
Well, you've got 5 years to find 49.
Yes.
You can do that, can't you? That's not too bad.
Yeah, no, we've got a big website. My website's gone live now, so that's at firstwomenuk.co.uk.
I was going to ask you for a plug.
Yeah,
First Women UK, is it?
First Women, it's 1ST, so the number 1ST.
Right.
UK, firstwomenuk.co.uk, and you can get in touch with us. People can get in touch with us, suggest firsts, and also we're looking for archive material of grandmas and aunties and great grandmas to do a sort of historical timeline from 1918 when we won the vote right up to 2018.
Yeah. So
that's a way that the public can get involved as well.
Brilliant. I think it's a great idea. I'm sure a lot of people listening will have some ideas for you, and they might get in touch now, hopefully. Good luck with it. We'll get you back in as it goes along, so we want to find out how it's progressing.
Yeah, and you can go and see it till the 5th of January.
In the National Portrait.
At the National Portrait Gallery, and it's free to get in.
There you go. We like free things. Thank you, Anita.
Thank you.
Thank you so much for coming in. Nice to see you. Anita Corbin there, Wellington-based artist, and it's the First Women project, and the aim is to unveil it in 2018 to mark the 100th anniversary of women's suffrage.